The heir to the Sterling Empire was starving to death in a penthouse filled with gold-flaked caviar, and the only thing that could save him was a cracked plastic lunchbox smelling of burnt sugar and cheap love. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment want to see what happens next. Your support helps me write more stories like this. The air on the 99th floor of the Sterling Tower was scrubbed so clean it burned. It didn't smell like air. It smelled of ozone, fear, and the crisp, terrifying scent of Dominic Sterling's pheromones. He was a prime alpha, a man whose mere presence could make seasoned board members drop to their knees and bare their necks. But right now, Dominic wasn't a titan of industry. He was a father, and he was losing his mind. Just one bite, Caden. Please. Dominic's voice, usually a command that moved markets, was cracked and desperate. He knelt on the imported Persian rug, holding out a silver fork. On the end of it was a piece of Wagyu beef, seared to perfection by a private chef who was currently weeping silently in the hallway. Caden, a 4-year-old alpha pup with eyes like bruised storm clouds, sat in the center of a massive leather armchair. He looked tiny, swallowed up by the furniture and the crushing weight of his father's legacy. He turned his head away from the meat, scrunching his nose as if it were poison. "No," Caden whispered. It was the only word he had said in 3 days. "It's meat, Caden." "It's good meat," Dominic pleaded, his hand shaking slightly. "You haven't eaten since Tuesday. The doctors are talking about feeding tubes. Do you want that?" Caden didn't answer. He just curled tighter into a ball, clutching a ragged, expensive plush tiger. The food on the table, a spread worth more than most people's annual salaries, sat cold and mocking. Lobster thermidor, truffle risotto, handcrafted dim sum. To Caden, it all smelled like metal and pressure. It smelled like the lonely, sterile life of a billionaire's son who had everything except the one thing he couldn't name. Dominic growled, a low rumble of frustration that vibrated in his chest. He stood up abruptly, dropping the fork. It clattered against the china, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent office. "Get it out," Dominic barked at the trembling assistants hovering by the door. "Get it all out. If you won't eat it, throw it away." As the staff scrambled to clear the untouched feast, Dominic walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city of New York lay spread out beneath him, a glittering grid of lights. He owned half of it, yet he felt powerless. His wife had died 2 years ago, and since then, Caden had been drifting away, becoming pickier, quieter, fading into a ghost. The doctors called it sensory rejection syndrome. Dominic called it a nightmare. "I have a meeting," Dominic said to the nanny, a stern beta woman named Mrs. Gable, who looked like she'd rather be wrestling alligators than watching the sullen child. "If he asks for anything, anything at all, you call me immediately, even if I'm in with the Prime Minister." "Yes, Mr. Sterling." Mrs. Gable nodded stiffly. Dominic adjusted his tie, masking his anguish with a mask of cold steel, and stormed out of the office. He didn't notice that in his haste, the biometric lock on the heavy oak door didn't fully engage. And he certainly didn't notice Caden's nose twitching. 40 floors below, in the cramped, windowless cubicle farm of the data entry department, Toby couldn't stop looking at the clock. 12:15 p.m. His stomach gave a loud, embarrassing growl that sounded like a dying lawnmower. Toby pressed a hand over his belly, blushing furiously. He was an omega, small and slight, with messy honey-colored hair that refused to stay neat and oversized glasses that kept sliding down his nose. His sweater was 3 years old and fraying at the cuffs, but it was clean, smelling faintly of vanilla fabric softener and the lemon soap he used to scrub the floors of his tiny apartment. "Hungry, Toby?" asked Lisa, the beta sitting in the cubicle next to him. She eyed him with sympathy. Everyone knew Toby was a single dad, struggling to make rent, barely scraping by on an entry-level salary in the most expensive city in the world. "Starving," Toby admitted, smiling weakly. "But I made something good today. Or, well, I tried." He reached under his desk and pulled out his lunchbox. It wasn't a sleek bento box or a glass container. It was a bright yellow plastic box with a cartoon duck on the lid, one he had bought at a dollar store for his own son, Leo. One of the duck's eyes had rubbed off, giving it a permanent wink. Toby popped the lid. Immediately, a scent wafted through the sterile, gray air of the office. It didn't smell like expensive truffles or aged wine. It smelled like warmth. It smelled like caramelized onions, slow-cooked pork belly simmering in soy sauce and ginger, and fluffy white rice sprinkled with sesame seeds. Nestled in the corner were 2 eggs, boiled and shaped into little bunnies with carrot ears, and a side of pickled radish that Toby had made himself. "Oh my God," Lisa groaned, leaning over the partition. "How do you do that?" It's leftovers, right? How does it smell like heaven? It's just food, Toby shrugged, though his ears turned pink. Cooking was his love language. It was the only way he could apologize to his son for not being able to afford the latest toys. He poured his heart into every meal, infusing the simple ingredients with a desperate, fierce affection. I made extra sauce because Leo likes it over his rice. Toby picked up his chopsticks, ready to take the first bite of the day. He had skipped breakfast to save milk for Leo's cereal. His mouth watered as he lifted a piece of the tender, dark pork. Just as the meat touched his lips, a shadow fell over his desk. Toby froze. He looked up, expecting to see his manager coming to scold him for eating 5 minutes early. But it wasn't his manager. Standing at the entrance of his cubicle was a child. The boy looked like a doll that had been dropped in a puddle, impeccably dressed in a tiny bespoke suit, but with disheveled hair and a face streaked with dried tears. He was clutching a plush tiger by the tail, dragging it on the dirty office carpet. But it was the boy's eyes that stopped Toby's heart. They were wide, dark, and locked onto Toby's lunchbox with a terrifying intensity. The office went silent. People stopped typing. The alpha pheromones rolling off this tiny child were undeveloped but potent, sour milk and ozone. This was a high-caste alpha pup. What was he doing in the basement levels? Hi there, Toby said softly, lowering his chopsticks. He used his dad voice, the gentle tone he used when Leo woke up from a nightmare. Are you lost, sweetheart? The boy didn't answer. He took a step forward, then another. He moved like a zombie, drawn by a spell. He walked right up to Toby's chair, his nose twitching. Toby didn't move. He knew he shouldn't interact with unauthorized visitors, especially children who looked this expensive, but his Omega instincts were screaming distress, pup in need. The boy reached out a trembling hand. He didn't reach for the toy on Toby's desk or the shiny stapler. He pointed a shaking finger at the bunny-shaped egg. Mine, the boy rasped. Toby blinked. You want the egg? Mine, the boy repeated, louder this time. His stomach let out a growl that rivaled the sound of a large dog. Lisa hissed from the next cubicle. Toby, don't. That kid is wearing a suit that costs more than our rent. If he gets sick, you'll get sued into oblivion. Toby hesitated. He knew Lisa was right. Rich people were litigious, and rich alphas were dangerous. But looking at this kid, Toby didn't see a lawsuit. He saw a hungry child. He saw the hollow cheeks and the pale skin. Okay, Toby whispered. He picked up the egg with his chopsticks. Do you want to try it? He held it out. The boy didn't take it with his hands. He leaned forward and snapped the egg right off the chopsticks with his mouth, chewing ferociously. He swallowed it whole and immediately opened his mouth for more, like a baby bird. More, the boy demanded. Meat. Give me. Toby's heart melted. He abandoned his own hunger entirely. He picked up a piece of the soy-glazed pork. Careful, it's sticky. The boy devoured it. Then a spoonful of rice. Then the pickled radish. Within 2 minutes, Toby was feeding this strange, rich child his entire lunch. The boy was eating with a frantic, animalistic need, humming happily as the savory, home-cooked flavors hit his tongue. He climbed onto Toby's lap uninvited, burying his face in the crook of Toby's neck between bites, inhaling Toby's scent, vanilla and lemon. You smell like mommy, the boy mumbled, his mouth full of rice. Toby stiffened, but he didn't push the boy away. He just rubbed the child's back soothingly. Slow down, Tiger. You'll get a tummy ache. Suddenly, the elevator doors at the end of the hall dinged open. The sound of heavy, frantic footsteps thundered against the floor. Caden. The roar shook the walls. Every Omega in the room flinched instinctively, dropping their heads. It was a Prime Alpha's command voice. Dominic Sterling stormed into the office area, his face pale, his suit jacket flapping open. Behind him trailed a phalanx of security guards and a hyperventilating Mrs. Gable. Dominic's eyes were wild, scanning the room for threats. Where is he? Dominic bellowed. Toby froze, the plastic spoon halfway to the boy's mouth. He looked up to see the CEO of the entire company, the man whose face was on the cover of Forbes in the lobby, staring directly at him. Dominic saw his son. He saw Caden sitting on the lap of a random, scruffy employee. He saw the cheap yellow plastic box. And then he saw Caden open his mouth and voluntarily take a bite of food. Dominic stopped dead in his tracks. The security guards nearly crashed into him. The entire office held its breath. Caden didn't even look at his father. He swallowed the pork and looked up at Toby, his dark eyes shining for the first time in months. He patted Toby's cheek with a sticky hand. More, Daddy, Caden said to Toby. The silence that followed was deafening. Toby went pale. I'm not, He called me. Dominic walked forward slowly, like he was approaching a bomb. He looked at the empty, expensive plates in his mind, and then at the cheap plastic box that was now empty, licked clean by his starving son. He looked at the way Caden was clinging to this stranger's sweater, his face buried in the man's neck. Dominic stopped in front of Toby's cubicle. He towered over the sitting Omega, blocking out the fluorescent lights. His scent, burnt cedar and rain, flooded Toby's senses, making him shiver. "What?" Dominic asked, his voice low and dangerous, pointing at the yellow box. "Is that?" Toby swallowed hard, hugging the boy tighter to protect him. It's braised pork belly, sir. My grandmother's recipe." Dominic looked at Caden. "Caden, you ate it." Caden looked at his father, then turned back to Toby and wrapped his small arms around Toby's neck, growling softly at his own father. "A warning. Mine." "He ate it all," Toby whispered, terrified he was about to be fired for stealing the CEO's son. "I'm sorry, sir." He looked hungry. Dominic stared at Toby. He took in the frayed sweater, the tired eyes, the scent of vanilla that seemed to be the only thing keeping his son calm. "He hasn't eaten in 4 days," Dominic said, his voice sounding strange, almost defeated. "He hasn't spoken in a week." Dominic looked at the empty box again. Then he looked at Toby. The look in the alpha's eyes changed. It shifted from fear to a predatory, calculating intensity. "What is your name?" Dominic asked. "Toby," he squeaked. "Toby Finch. Data entry." "Pack your things, Toby Finch," Dominic commanded. Toby gasped. Am I fired?" "Sir, please, I have a son. I can't lose this job." "You're not fired," Dominic interrupted, reaching down. But he didn't grab Caden. He grabbed Toby's wrist. His grip was warm, large, and possessive. "You're promoted," Dominic said, pulling Toby and Caden, who refused to let go, out of the chair. "My son just called you daddy. And he ate your food. Which means you are coming with me." "Coming where?" Toby stammered, stumbling as he was dragged toward the elevator. Dominic looked back, a dark, desperate smirk playing on his lips. "To make dinner." End of Chapter 1. Part 2. The elevator ride to the 99th floor felt less like a journey and more like an abduction. Toby Finch was pressed into the corner of the polished steel cabin, his back against the cold, mirrored wall. The space, though large for an elevator, felt suffocatingly small with Dominic Sterling occupying it. The Alpha CEO stood in the center, his legs spread in a stance of absolute dominance, his chest heaving slightly as he adjusted his cuffs. The air in the cabin was thick, saturated with the scent of Alpha, a heavy, woodsy aroma of burnt cedar and the metallic tang of a thunderstorm about to break. It was a scent that made Toby's Omega instincts scream 2 contradictory commands: run away and submit. But Toby couldn't run. He couldn't even move. Because clinging to his leg, wrapped around his fraying denim jeans like a koala, was the heir to the Sterling Empire. Caden had fallen asleep the moment the elevator doors glided shut. The sugar crash from the braised pork and rice, combined with the emotional exhaustion of his days-long hunger strike, had knocked the boy out cold. His small, tear-stained face was pressed against Toby's thigh, his grip iron-tight. He was still holding Toby's hand, his tiny fingers laced through Toby's, refusing to let go even in his sleep. "Sir," Toby whispered, his voice trembling. He didn't dare look Dominic in the eye. My hand. He's cutting off the circulation." Dominic turned slowly. His eyes, the color of cold steel, swept over Toby. He didn't look at Toby's face. He looked at the connection, the way his son, who hadn't let anyone touch him in months, was physically attached to this stranger. "Let him hold it," Dominic said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the floorboards. "If you wake him up, you're fired." "But you just promoted me," Toby pointed out, a spark of nervous defiance flaring up. He was terrified, yes, but he was also a father. He knew how to handle tantrums, even from billionaires. "Sir, with all due respect, I have to pick up my son in an hour. Daycare closes at 4. If I'm late, they charge $1 a minute. I don't have that kind of money." Dominic blinked. The information seemed to bounce off him. "You have a son?" "Yes. Leo. He's 4. Dominic stared at Toby with a renewed, piercing intensity. He stepped closer, invading Toby's personal space. Toby could feel the heat radiating from the Alpha's body through his thin sweater. Dominic leaned down, inhaling deeply near Toby's neck. Toby flinched, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "That explains it," Dominic murmured to himself. "You smell like a parent. You smell like milk and comfort. That's why he chose you." "He chose me because I had bacon," Toby corrected breathlessly. "The why doesn't matter," Dominic said, straightening up as the elevator chimed. The result matters. The doors slid open, revealing not an office, but a penthouse that looked more like a museum than a home. The floors were marble, so polished they looked like black water. The walls were glass, revealing the skyline of the city amidst the gray winter clouds. There were sculptures that looked like twisted metal, paintings that were likely worth millions, and furniture that looked too uncomfortable to sit on. It was breathtaking. It was freezing. "Welcome to your new office," Dominic said, gesturing to the expanse. "This is a house," Toby said, shuffling forward awkwardly because of the sleeping child attached to his leg. "Mr. Sterling, I do data entry. Spreadsheets. I don't do this." "Mrs. Gable," Dominic roared. A severe-looking woman with a tight bun appeared from a hallway. She stopped dead when she saw Caden. Her eyes widened behind her spectacles. "He's sleeping," Mrs. Gable gasped. "And is that grease on his mouth?" "He ate," Dominic said, and for a second, the steel in his voice cracked, revealing the exhausted father beneath. "He ate everything, Mrs. Gable. A box of whatever this man had." Mrs. Gable looked at Toby with a mixture of suspicion and awe, as if Toby had performed a magic trick or brought a dead bird back to life. "Who is this?" "This is Toby," Dominic said. "He is the new nutritional specialist." "I'm really not," Toby squeaked. Dominic ignored him. He turned to Toby, his expression shifting into business mode. "Here is the deal, Toby. My son is dying. Not medically, not yet, but his spirit is fading. The doctors say it's grief. They say it's sensory processing disorder. I say he's lonely and stubborn." Dominic paused, looking at the sleeping boy. "He hasn't touched food in 4 days. Today, he ate your lunch. That makes you the most valuable asset in this company. More valuable than the CFO. More valuable than the legal team." Dominic pulled a checkbook from his inner suit pocket. He uncapped a fountain pen that looked like it was made of gold. "How much?" Dominic asked. Toby blinked. "How much for what?" "For the lunchbox," Dominic said, scribbling. "And for you to cook it again. Tonight. And tomorrow breakfast. And lunch." "Sir, I can't." $5,000, Dominic said, ripping the check out. He held it up. Toby choked on his own saliva. "5,000? For pork belly. That was 3 months of rent. That was winter coats for Leo. That was the robot dog Leo had been begging for." "10,000, Dominic said, misinterpreting Toby's shock for negotiation. He wrote another check. "Cash. Right now. Just go into that kitchen and make whatever you made today. But make it fresh." Toby looked at the check. His hands were shaking. He looked down at Caden. The boy stirred, whimpering in his sleep, rubbing his face deeper into the rough wool of Toby's sweater. "Don't go," the boy's body language screamed. Toby sighed. He was an Omega. He was wired to nurture. He couldn't leave a starving child, even if the father was a terrifying tyrant. "I can't take $10,000 for cooking dinner. That's insane," Toby said, his voice soft but firm. "But I'll cook for him. On one condition." Dominic raised an eyebrow. He wasn't used to conditions. "Name it." "I need to leave in 45 minutes to get Leo. And I need you to hold your son so I can walk to the kitchen." Dominic looked at Caden. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. He reached down, his large hands sliding under Caden's arms to lift him. Immediately, Caden's eyes snapped open. "No!" Caden shrieked. It wasn't a cry, it was a feral scream. He kicked out, his small patent leather shoe connecting with Dominic's shin. "No! Mine!" Caden scrambled up Toby's body like a monkey, wrapping his arms around Toby's neck and burying his face in Toby's scent gland. He growled at Dominic. A low, vibrating sound from his little chest. Dominic froze, his hands hovering in the air. Hurt flashed in his eyes, raw and unguarded, before the mask slammed back down. His own son was rejecting him. Again, Toby felt a pang of sympathy so sharp it hurt. He saw the pain behind the billionaire's eyes. Dominic Sterling could buy the world, but he couldn't buy a hug from his son. "It's okay," Toby said, instinctively raising a hand to support Caden's bottom. He bounced the boy slightly. "It's okay, little wolf. Daddy's just trying to help." Toby realized too late that he had referred to Dominic as Daddy. The air in the room shifted. Dominic's nostrils flared. "Kitchen," Dominic said, his voice tight. "Now." The kitchen was larger than Toby's entire apartment. It had 3 ovens, a walk-in fridge, and marble countertops that stretched for miles. But it was cold. It was empty. There were no magnets on the fridge, no half-eaten bags of chips, no soul. Toby set to work, which was difficult with a 40-pound 4-year-old clinging to his back. Caden refused to be put down, so Toby had to improvise. He found a clean dish towel and tied Caden to his back, piggyback style, the way he used to carry Leo when he was a baby. Caden seemed content there, resting his chin on Toby's shoulder, watching with wide, curious eyes as Toby chopped green onions. "You like that sound?" Toby asked softly, the knife rhythmically hitting the cutting board. "Chop, chop, chop." "Fast," Caden whispered, fascinated. Dominic stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching. He had removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms that were surprisingly muscular, corded with veins. He watched the way Toby moved, efficient, graceful, humming a soft tune under his breath. The kitchen, usually sterile, began to change. The smell of searing garlic and ginger filled the air, chasing away the metallic scent of the air conditioning. Steam rose from the pan. The warmth was palpable. For the first time in 2 years, the penthouse didn't feel like a tomb. "You're making fried rice," Dominic observed, breaking the silence. "It's comfort food," Toby said, tossing the wok with a flick of his wrist. "When the tummy hurts, you need soft, warm things. Salty but sweet. No truffles. No gold leaf. Just food." "He hates rice," Dominic said. "We tried risotto last week." He threw it at the wall. "That's because risotto is slimy," Toby said without thinking. "And it smells like old socks if you use too much cheese. Kids have sensitive noses, especially alphas." "You were overwhelming him." Dominic went silent. He wasn't used to being corrected by data entry clerks. But as he watched Caden reach over Toby's shoulder to steal a piece of diced carrot, he couldn't argue. "Is it ready?" Caden asked, his voice small. "Almost," Toby said. He plated a small bowl. "Blow on it first. It's hot like a volcano." Toby turned, intending to put Caden in a high chair. But Caden tightened his grip. "No. Here. Eat here." Toby sighed, looking at Dominic for help. Dominic just crossed his arms. "Do what he says." So, Toby stood in the middle of the multi-million-dollar kitchen, feeding the heir to the sterling fortune from a spoon while the boy clung to his back. Caden ate. He ate the whole bowl. Then he licked the spoon. "Good," Caden decided. He rested his cheek against Toby's hair. "You stay." Toby's heart dropped. He looked at the clock on the microwave. 3:45 p.m. I can't stay, buddy," Toby said gently. "I have to go get my little boy. Leo is waiting for me." Caden stiffened. The atmosphere in the kitchen instantly turned volatile. The boy's scent turned sour, burnt rubber. "No go," Caden growled. "My daddy." "I'm not your daddy, sweetie," Toby said, trying to untie the makeshift sling. "Your daddy is right there." "No," Caden screamed. "He is daddy." He pointed at Dominic. "You are papa." The silence that crashed into the room was absolute. Toby turned bright red, his face matching the chili oil on the counter. He doesn't mean, he's confused." Dominic pushed off the doorframe. He walked toward them. The predator was back. He moved with a stalking grace, closing the distance until he was standing directly in front of Toby. Dominic reached out. Toby flinched, expecting to be hit or pushed away. Instead, Dominic's large hand came up and cupped Caden's head, his thumb brushing against Toby's neck in the process. The touch sent a jolt of electricity straight down Toby's spine. "He called you Papa," Dominic said softly. His voice was unreadable. "He hasn't acknowledged a role for a second parent since his mother died." "I'm sorry," Toby whispered. "I didn't encourage it." "I know," Dominic said. He looked deep into Toby's eyes behind the oversized glasses. "You have to leave to get your son?" "Yes. Right now. And if you leave, Caden will scream until he throws up. He will stop eating again. We will be back to square one." Dominic's jaw tightened. He looked like a man making a decision that would change the course of the world. "Bring him," Dominic said. Toby blinked. "What?" "Your son. Leo," Dominic commanded. "Go get him. Bring him here." "Here?" "To the penthouse." Toby laughed nervously. "Sir, Leo is energetic. He's an Omega pup, but he thinks he's a dinosaur. He'll break your vases. He'll get sticky handprints on your glass walls." "I don't care about the vases," Dominic said. He leaned in closer, trapping Toby against the counter. His pheromones flared dominance, power, and a strange, new undercurrent of need. "I care that my son is eating. I care that for the first time in years, I don't hear silence in this house." Dominic pulled out his phone. "I will have my driver take you. You will pick up Leo. You will bring him here. You will cook dinner for both of them. And then?" Toby asked, his breath hitching. "And then," Dominic said, his gaze dropping to Toby's lips for a fraction of a second before snapping back up, "we will discuss your new contract. Because you are not going back to data entry, Toby Finch. You belong to the 99th floor now. Toby felt dizzy. I can't just move in. That's like a movie. A bad movie. It's a job offer, Dominic corrected. Live-in chef. Nanny. Companion. Whatever this is. He gestured to the bond between Toby and Caden. I will pay off your debts. I will pay for your son's school. I will give you anything you want. Dominic leaned in so close his lips brushed Toby's ear. Just don't take the warmth away, Dominic whispered, his voice rough with desperation. Please. Toby looked at the alpha, the most powerful man in the city, begging him. He felt Caden's small heart beating against his back. He thought of his own empty bank account, and Leo wearing a coat that was too small. Toby swallowed hard. I need a car seat, Toby whispered. For the limo. Dominic exhaled, a sound of immense relief. A small, victorious smirk touched his lips. Done. End of Chapter 2. Part 3. The ride to the daycare was a blur of neon lights and soft leather. Toby sat in the back of the Maybach, clutching the door handle, as if prepared to tuck and roll. When the sleek black car pulled up to Little Star's daycare, a crumbling brick building with peeling paint, it looked like a spaceship had landed in a swamp. Parents picking up their children stopped and stared. Jaws dropped. Toby scrambled out, his face burning. He ran inside and emerged 2 minutes later, holding the hand of a small boy who was a chaotic whirlwind of energy. Leo was the son to Caden's rain cloud. He had Toby's messy honey hair, big round glasses, and a gap-toothed grin that could power a city. He was wearing a superhero cape made from an old towel and mismatched socks. Whoa! Leo gasped, stopping in front of the car. He looked at the driver, a stone-faced beta in a uniform. Are you Batman? Get in, Leo, Toby hissed, buckling him into the brand-new car seat that had materialized in the back seat as promised. Is this a spaceship? Leo asked, bouncing against the restraints. Are we going to the moon? We're going to a friend's house, Toby said, his voice tight. We're going to have dinner. You have to be on your best behavior, okay? No jumping on couches. No touching expensive things. And definitely no biting. I only bite villains, Leo declared. The drive back to the Sterling Tower was silent, but Toby's mind was screaming. What was he doing? He was taking his son into the lion's den. Dominic Sterling was dangerous. Not because he was cruel, though the tabloids said he was, but because he was too much. Too rich, too handsome, too alpha. When the elevator opened onto the penthouse, the atmosphere changed instantly. The air was heavy. Dominic was standing in the foyer, arms crossed, looking like a sentinel guarding a fortress. And peeking out from behind his leg was Caden. Caden looked different. He had washed his face, and someone, Mrs. Gable, presumably, had combed his hair. But his eyes were dark and narrowed, fixed laser-like on Leo. Leo tumbled out of the elevator, his cape fluttering. He stopped. He looked at the marble floors. He looked at the view. Then he looked at Caden. Hi, Leo chirped, waving a hand. I'm Leo. I have a cape. You want to see my rock collection? It's in my pocket. Caden didn't smile. He stepped out from behind Dominic, his small posture rigid. He let out a low, menacing growl. It was tiny like a kitten trying to be a tiger, but the intent was clear. Mine, Caden said, pointing at Toby. Leo blinked. He looked at Toby, then back at Caden. His smile vanished. No, Leo said, stepping closer to Toby and grabbing Toby's hand. My daddy. My papa. Caden shouted, stomping his foot. He ran forward and grabbed Toby's other leg. My daddy. Leo yelled back, hugging Toby's waist. Mine. Mine. Toby stood frozen in the middle of the foyer, trapped between two 4-year-olds who were currently engaging in a pheromone war. He looked helplessly at Dominic. Help me, his eyes pleaded. Dominic didn't help. He was laughing. It was a low, rusty sound, as if he hadn't used it in years. Dominic walked over, the sound of his expensive shoes clicking on the marble silencing the boys instantly. He crouched down, balancing on the balls of his feet, bringing himself to eye level with the children. Enough, Dominic said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the absolute authority of a prime alpha. Both boys snapped their mouths shut. Dominic looked at Leo. He studied the cheap clothes, the taped-up glasses, and the bright, defiant eyes. You like rocks? Dominic asked. Leo nodded slowly, intimidated but curious. Dominic reached into his pocket and pulled out a diamond paperweight from a nearby console table. It was raw, uncut, and worth more than Toby's life. This is a rock, from a volcano in Iceland. Leo's eyes went wide. Whoa, you can play with it, Dominic said, handing the diamond to the stunned child. If you share your daddy for dinner. Leo weighed the diamond in his hand. He looked at Caden, who was still glaring. Then he looked at Toby. Okay, Leo decided. But I sit next to him. Deal, Dominic said. He stood up and looked at Toby. The amusement faded from his eyes, replaced by a heat that made Toby's knees weak. Dinner. Now. I'm starving. And apparently, I have a craving. Dinner was a battlefield, but a delicious one. Toby made omuris, fried rice wrapped in a fluffy omelet, topped with a demi-glace sauce he whipped up from scratch. He drew a smiley face on Leo's with ketchup and a grumpy face on Caden's. Caden stared at the grumpy face. The corner of his mouth twitched. He took a spoon and savagely ate the ketchup smile. Is it good? Toby asked nervously. Caden nodded aggressively. He was eating. He was actually eating. Dominic watched his son with an expression that looked like pain mixed with awe. He took a bite of his own food, something he hadn't done at home in months either. The flavor exploded in his mouth. It was humble, savory, and incredibly comforting. It tasted like home. Not the cold, empty home he had now, but a home he had never really known. You're a wizard, Dominic murmured, watching Toby wipe sauce off Leo's chin. I'm just a dad, Toby said, not looking up. Eat your salad, Mr. Sterling. You look pale. You need iron. Dominic choked on his water. No one told Dominic Sterling to eat his salad. Did you just order me? Dominic asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Toby said, emboldened by the chaos of the children. If I'm the nutritional specialist, you listen to me. Eat the spinach. Dominic stared at him. The air crackled. For a second, Toby thought he had gone too far. Then, slowly, Dominic picked up his fork and ate the spinach, his eyes never leaving Toby's face. It was an act of submission that felt incredibly intimate. By 8 p.m., the adrenaline had crashed. They were in the living room. The TV was on low, playing cartoons. On one end of the massive sofa, Leo was curled up, snoring softly with his cape wrapped around him like a blanket. On the other end, Caden was fast asleep, his head resting on Toby's lap, his hand gripping Toby's shirt. Toby sat in the middle, trapped. He was exhausted. His glasses were crooked. He smelled like ketchup and baby powder. Dominic walked in, holding 2 glasses of wine. He set them down on the coffee table and sat next to Toby. Close. Too close. They're out, Dominic whispered. Yeah, Toby breathed. They fought hard. Toby, Dominic said. His voice was different now. The playful edge was gone. It was serious. Heavy. Toby turned to look at him. Dominic was staring at Caden's sleeping face, his expression unguarded. Thank you, Dominic said. I don't know who you are, or where you came from, but thank you. He just needed someone to not be afraid of him, Toby said softly. Everyone walks on eggshells around him because he's your son. He's just a little boy who misses his mom. Dominic flinched. He turned his gaze to Toby. And what about you? Who do you miss? Toby looked down at his hands. I miss not worrying about rent, he joked weakly. I miss sleep. Dominic didn't laugh. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Toby's ear. His fingers lingered on Toby's cheek. The skin-to-skin contact was electric. Toby stopped breathing. Stay, Dominic said. I have to take Leo home, Toby whispered, though he didn't pull away. It's late. It's snowing, Dominic said. He gestured to the window. Thick, white flakes were swirling violently outside. A blizzard had started while they were eating. The roads are closing. You can't leave. Toby looked at the window. It was a whiteout. I have guest rooms, Dominic said. 10 of them. Pick one. Or. His voice dropped an octave, rumbling deep in his chest. Stay here. Close to Caden. Close to me. Toby looked at the alpha. The scent of burnt cedar was surrounding him, wrapping around him like a warm blanket. He felt safe. For the first time in years, he felt protected. But before he could answer, Caden shifted in his sleep. Papa, the boy mumbled, tightening his grip on Toby's shirt. Stay. Dominic looked at Toby, a challenge and a plea in his eyes. The storm is getting worse, Toby, Dominic murmured, leaning in until their noses were almost touching. I don't think you're going anywhere tonight. Just then, Toby's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out awkwardly. It was a text message from his landlord. Pay rent by tomorrow morning, or I change the locks. Toby stared at the screen. Then he looked at the blizzard outside. Then he looked at the billionaire who was offering him a sanctuary. Toby put the phone away. He looked Dominic in the eye. Okay, Toby whispered. We'll stay. Dominic smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a dragon who had just successfully lured a treasure into his cave and had no intention of ever letting it out. Good, Dominic purred. Let me show you to the master bedroom. Caden prefers to sleep there. And I assume you won't leave him. Toby blinked. Wait, the master bedroom? Where you sleep? Dominic stood up, scooping the sleeping Caden into his arms with effortless strength. It's the biggest bed, Dominic said over his shoulder as he walked toward the hallway. Plenty of room for a pack. End of Chapter 3. Part 4. The master bedroom was not a room, it was a kingdom. Toby stood in the doorway, clutching a sleeping Leo in his arms, feeling entirely too small for the space. The room was dominated by a bed that looked like it could sleep a family of 10, a vast expanse of charcoal silk and Egyptian cotton. One entire wall was glass, currently battered by the white fury of the snowstorm, but inside, the fireplace crackled with a low, golden warmth. But it wasn't the luxury that made Toby's knees weak. It was the scent. This was Dominic's nest. In Omegaverse biology, an alpha's bedroom is their sanctuary. It is saturated with their purest, most potent pheromones. To an unbonded Omega like Toby, walking into this room was like walking into a thick fog of burnt cedar, spiced rum, and pure, unadulterated dominance. It triggered a primitive part of his brain that whispered, safe. Home. Mate. Breathe, Toby, he whispered to himself, trying to ignore the heat rising in his cheeks. Dominic walked past him, carrying Caden. The alpha looked entirely too comfortable. He moved through the heavy air of the room like a predator stalking his own territory. He walked to the center of the massive bed and gently laid Caden down. Caden immediately curled up, burying his face into the silk pillows that smelled like his father. He let out a contented sigh, his small body relaxing instantly. Put Leo next to him, Dominic whispered, not looking up. He was unbuttoning his cuffs, his movements slow and hypnotic. Toby hesitated. Sir, are you sure? Leo kicks in his sleep. He thinks he's doing karate. The bed is 8 feet wide, Toby. I think we'll survive a 4-year-old ninja. Dominic turned, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. Unless you're afraid to come closer? Toby swallowed hard. He walked to the bed, the plush carpet swallowing his footsteps. He lowered Leo next to Caden. The moment the two boys touched, they instinctively gravitated toward each other. Leo mumbled something about bat signal and threw an arm over Caden. Caden didn't push him away. Instead, he grabbed Leo's cape and held it like a security blanket. They've bonded, Dominic murmured, standing right behind Toby. Toby jumped. He hadn't heard the alpha move. Dominic was close, so close Toby could feel the heat radiating from his chest. Kids are adaptable, Toby said, his voice breathless. It's not just adaptability, Dominic corrected. He reached out and touched the back of Toby's neck, his fingers grazing the sensitive skin over Toby's scent gland. It's instinct. They know where they belong. Toby shivered violently. The touch was electric. I don't have pajamas, he blurted out, desperate to break the tension before he did something stupid, like lean back into the alpha's chest. Dominic pulled his hand away, though his eyes lingered on Toby's neck. I'll get you something. He walked to a closet that was the size of Toby's entire apartment. He returned a moment later holding a black t-shirt. It's one of mine, Dominic said, handing it over. It will be big on you. Toby took the fabric. It was soft, worn-in cotton, and it smelled heavily of Dominic. Wearing an alpha's clothes was a claiming act. It was something mates did. Thank you, Toby whispered. He fled to the ensuite bathroom to change. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he looked ridiculous. The shirt hung off his narrow shoulders, the hem reaching his knees. He looked like he was wearing a dress. But as he inhaled the scent of the fabric, his anxiety melted away. He felt wrapped in armor. When Toby emerged from the bathroom, the lights were dimmed. The fire was the only source of illumination, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Dominic was already in bed. He was shirtless. Toby froze. Dominic Sterling shirtless was a weapon of mass destruction. Muscles corded his torso, scarred faintly here and there, telling stories of a life that wasn't just boardrooms and signatures. He was reading a tablet, leaning against the headboard, looking like a dark god of comfort. There's space, Dominic said, not looking up, but patting the empty spot on the mattress. On the left. The arrangement was clear. Caden and Leo were in the middle. Dominic was on the right. The left side was empty. Toby climbed in tentatively. The sheets felt like water against his skin. He lay on the very edge of the bed, risking falling off, just to keep distance. If you fall off, I'm not picking you up, Dominic drawled. I'm fine, Toby squeaked. They lay in silence for a few minutes. The only sound was the howling wind outside and the soft breathing of the children. Toby. Yes, sir? Stop calling me sir. Not in here. Not in the dark. Toby turned his head. Dominic had put the tablet away. He was lying on his side, watching Toby over the heads of the sleeping boys. Okay, Dominic. The name felt heavy on his tongue. Intimate. Why were you crying in the break room yesterday? Dominic asked suddenly. Toby blinked. I wasn't crying. I could smell the salt in your scent. You were distressed. Dominic's eyes were searching. Was it the money? Toby sighed. He stared at the ceiling. In the dark, it was easier to be honest. My landlord raised the rent. Again. I had $40 to last until next Friday. I was trying to figure out if I could sell my plasma to buy Leo winter boots. Dominic went silent. The silence stretched for a long time. You will never have to worry about boots again, Dominic said finally. His voice was a vow. Or rent. Or food. I don't want charity, Toby whispered fiercely. I want to work. I want to earn it. You are earning it, Dominic said. He reached over the sleeping children. His hand found Toby's in the darkness. You brought my son back to me. There is no price tag on that. Dominic's thumb rubbed the back of Toby's hand. The rhythm was soothing, addictive. Toby felt his eyelids growing heavy. The emotional exhaustion of the day was catching up to him. The scent of the alpha, usually so intimidating, was lulling him into a deep, dreamless sleep. Good night, Toby, Dominic whispered. Good night, Dom, Toby murmured, drifting off. He didn't see the way Dominic's eyes widened at the nickname. He didn't see the way Dominic brought Toby's hand to his lips and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to his knuckles. Toby woke up to a weight on his chest. He blinked, disoriented. The room was filled with the gray light of a snow-covered morning. The storm had passed, leaving the world silent and white. Toby tried to move, but he was pinned. It wasn't the children. Caden and Leo were still asleep, tangled together in a pile of limbs at the foot of the bed. The weight on Toby was an arm. A heavy, muscular arm. Toby froze. He looked down. Dominic was asleep behind him, his arm thrown possessively over Toby's waist, pulling Toby's back flush against his chest. Dominic's face was buried in the crook of Toby's neck, his breath warm and steady against Toby's scent gland. Toby was the little spoon. In the alpha's nest. Oh my God. Toby's heart hammered a frantic rhythm. He should move. He should wake up. He should push the billionaire away. But it felt perfect. It felt like the missing piece of a puzzle he didn't know he was building. Dominic shifted. He didn't wake up, but he tightened his grip, pulling Toby even closer, growling low in his throat, a possessive, contented sound. Mine. Toby bit his lip to keep from whimpering. The biology was overwhelming. His omega instincts were purring. Suddenly, the silence of the morning was shattered. Beep, beep, clack. The sound of the electronic lock on the penthouse front door disengaging. Toby stiffened. Dominic didn't stir. He was in a deep sleep, likely for the first time in weeks. Footsteps echoed on the marble floor of the hallway. High heels. Click, click, click. Fast and angry. Dominic, a woman's voice called out. It was sharp, sophisticated, and icy. Mrs. Gable said you weren't answering your phone. The board meeting starts in an hour, and the bedroom door, which had been left slightly ajar, was pushed open. Toby squeezed his eyes shut, pretending to be asleep, praying for invisibility. A woman stepped into the room. She was stunning, tall, wearing a white power suit that cost more than Toby's life earnings, with sleek blonde hair and eyes like shards of glass. She stopped. She saw the bed. She saw the tangled children. And then she saw Dominic Sterling, the unapproachable Ice King, spooning a small man wearing his t-shirt. What? The woman hissed, her voice trembling with rage. In the hell is this? Dominic woke up instantly. The alpha instinct to protect the nest kicked in before his conscious brain did. He didn't let go of Toby. He didn't scramble away. Dominic sat up partially, propping himself on one elbow, but he kept his other arm firmly draped over Toby, effectively pinning him to the mattress. He glared at the intruder with eyes that were still half asleep, but fully dangerous. Get out, Dominic growled. His voice was rough with sleep and menace. Get out, the woman screeched. Dominic, I am your fiancé. Who is this? Is this the hired help? Toby opened his eyes. Fiancé. The word hit him like a bucket of ice water. He scrambled to sit up, pushing Dominic's arm away. I'm the nutritional. Be quiet, Toby, Dominic said calmly. He didn't look at Toby. He looked at the woman. We are not engaged, Vanessa. We have a merger proposal. There is a difference. My father owns 40% of your logistics chain. Vanessa yelled. She marched to the side of the bed, looming over Toby. She looked at Toby with pure disgust. She sniffed the air. An omega? A low-caste stray omega? You brought a stray into your bed, Dominic? Where your son sleeps. Don't talk about him like that, Dominic warned, his voice dropping. He smells like poverty and cheap vanilla. Vanessa spat. She reached out, intending to grab Toby's shoulder to pull him out of the bed. Big mistake. Before Dominic could move, a small growl erupted from the foot of the bed. Caden was awake, and Caden did not like people yelling at his new papa. The 4-year-old scrambled up the bed on all fours, moving like a little wolf. He positioned himself between Toby and Vanessa. He bared his tiny teeth. Go away, Caden screamed. Bad lady. Caden, sweetheart, move, Vanessa said, her face twisting into a fake smile. I need to talk to your father about the trash in his bed. Caden didn't move. He picked up the nearest object, Dominic's heavy tablet from the nightstand, and heaved it with all his might. It didn't hit Vanessa, but it crashed into the vase of flowers next to her, sending water and glass shattering everywhere. Vanessa shrieked, jumping back. You spoiled little brat. That is enough, Dominic roared. He was out of bed in a second, standing between his family, the thought hit him suddenly, and Vanessa. He towered over her, radiating fury. You will not insult my son, Dominic said, pointing to the door. You will not touch my guest. And you will never, ever walk into my home uninvited again. The merger is off, Vanessa. Get out before I have security throw you out. Vanessa went pale. You're canceling a $1 billion merger. For him? She pointed a manicured finger at Toby, who was shaking in the sheets. Dominic looked back at Toby. He saw the fear in Toby's eyes. He saw the way Leo was now awake and hugging Toby's arm. He saw Caden standing guard. Dominic looked back at Vanessa. No, Dominic said. I'm canceling it for us. Vanessa stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Silence returned to the room. But it was a tense, fragile silence. Toby sat there, clutching the duvet to his chest. He felt sick. A fiancé. A merger. Billions of dollars. Dominic turned around. He ran a hand through his messy hair, looking exhausted. He looked at Toby. Toby, I should go, Toby whispered. He scrambled out of bed, grabbing his jeans from the floor. I should go. I can't. I can't be the reason you lose billions. I'm just the lunch guy. Toby, stop, Dominic said, stepping forward. No. Toby backed away, tears pricking his eyes. The fantasy was over. Reality had kicked down the door. You're a king, Dominic. I'm just trying to survive. We don't fit. We can't fit. He grabbed Leo, who looked confused and scared. Come on, Leo. We're going home. Toby, Dominic shouted. But Toby was fast. He rushed out of the bedroom, Leo in tow, running barefoot on the cold marble. He needed to leave before he let himself believe that the alpha actually wanted him. Dominic stood in the center of the room, listening to the elevator ding. Caden sat on the bed, tears streaming down his face. Papa go, he whimpered. Papa gone. Dominic looked at his son. He felt a pain in his chest that was sharper than any heart attack. It was the severing of a bond that had just started to form. Dominic grabbed his phone. He dialed his head of security. Lock the building, Dominic ordered, his voice terrifyingly calm. Disable the elevators. No one leaves. He looked at Caden. Put your shoes on, son, Dominic said, grabbing a fresh shirt. We're going to get him back. And this time, I'm not asking. End of Chapter 4. Part 5. The elevator descended smoothly, a silent bullet dropping through the chamber of the Sterling Tower. Toby stood in the corner, pressing Leo's head against his chest so the boy couldn't see the tears sliding down Toby's face. His heart was hammering against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of run, run, run. He had been foolish. For one night, one magical, warm, cedar-scented night, he had let himself pretend. He had pretended that he wasn't a broke single dad who patched his own shoes with glue. He had pretended he belonged in a bed with silk sheets and a man who could move mountains with a phone call. But Vanessa's arrival had been the splash of cold reality. She was right. He was the help. He was the lunch guy. And he was standing in the middle of a merger worth billions. Daddy, why are we crying? Leo asked, his voice muffled against Toby's oversized t-shirt, Dominic's t-shirt. Toby realized with a pang of shame. We're not crying, Bug, Toby choked out, wiping his face aggressively. We're just playing. Secret agent escape. Did the bad lady win? Leo asked. No, Toby whispered. But the good guys have to leave before they get hurt. Suddenly, the smooth descent jolted. Clang. The elevator shuddered violently and came to a dead stop. The soft white lights flickered and died, instantly replaced by the ominous, pulsing glow of the red emergency lights. Toby gasped, backing into the wall. No. No, no, no. Cool, Leo shouted, looking at the red light. Red alert. Shields up. We're stuck, Toby panicked, hitting the open door button. Nothing happened. He hit the lobby button. Nothing. The intercom crackled to life. Mr. Finch. The voice was mechanical and calm, the building's AI security system. All vertical transport has been suspended by command override Alpha 1. Please remain calm. Mr. Sterling is on his way. Toby slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He pulled Leo into his lap. Dominic had actually done it. He had locked down a 70-story skyscraper just to stop a data entry clerk from leaving. It wasn't romantic. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. It was exactly what an alpha would do for his mate. 5 minutes later, the elevator doors didn't open. They were pried open. 2 massive security guards in tactical gear pulled the steel doors apart. Beyond them, the lobby was a fortress. The glass revolving doors were locked. A line of security staff stood at attention, and running across the polished marble floor, looking like a man possessed, was Dominic Sterling. He was barefoot. The billionaire CEO, who wouldn't be caught dead without a tie, was sprinting through his own lobby in pajama pants and an undershirt, his chest heaving, his eyes wild and scanning the crowd. Toby! The roar echoed off the high ceilings. Toby stood up, holding Leo's hand. He stepped out of the elevator, trembling. Mr. Sterling, you can't. Dominic didn't stop. He crashed into Toby, not with violence, but with the force of a desperate embrace. He wrapped his arms around Toby and Leo, lifting Toby slightly off the ground, burying his face in Toby's neck. Don't, Dominic rasped, his voice broken. Don't you dare leave me. The scent of him was overpowering. Burnt cedar, usually crisp and controlled, was now thick with smoke and distress. It washed over Toby, making his knees buckle. Put me down, Toby whispered, though his hands were already clutching Dominic's shoulders. Dominic, everyone is watching. You're making a scene. Let them watch, Dominic growled into his hair. Let them see. He set Toby down, but didn't let go of his shoulders. He looked Toby in the eye. Dominic's eyes were red-rimmed. He looked wrecked. You think this is about the food? Dominic asked, his voice shaking. You think I locked down the building because I want pork belly? I don't know what you want. Toby shouted back, finally letting his frustration spill over. I'm nobody, Dominic. I have negative $12 in my bank account. Your fiancé called me trash. And you're the king of New York. I can't live in your world. I can't be your pet project. Fiancé. Dominic laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Vanessa is a business contract. A contract I just shredded. But the merger. I don't care about the merger. Dominic yelled, shocking the entire lobby into silence. I have billions, Toby. I have cars I never drive and houses I never visit. I have everything. He stepped closer, pressing his forehead against Toby's. But until yesterday, Dominic whispered, I didn't have a home. Toby's breath hitched. My son was starving, Dominic said, tears forming in his steel-gray eyes. I was starving. We were ghosts in that penthouse. And then you walked in with a plastic lunchbox and a smile that looked like sunshine, and suddenly, the house was warm. Dominic took Toby's hand and placed it over his own heart. It was beating frantically. I'm not asking you to be the lunch guy, Dominic said intensely. I'm asking you to be my partner. I'm asking you to let me court you. Properly. I'm asking you to help me raise these boys who have already decided they are brothers. As if on cue, the elevator dinged again. The service elevator opened. Out stepped Caden. He was wearing his pajamas and snow boots on the wrong feet. He was dragging his tiger plushie. He looked small and determined. Papa! Caden shrieked. He ran across the lobby. He didn't run to Dominic. He ran straight to Toby and hugged his legs. No go, Caden sobbed. My papa. My Leo. Leo, who had been watching the drama with wide eyes, broke free from Toby's grip and hugged Caden. We're not going, Caden. My dad is just being dramatic. Toby looked down at the 2 boys clinging to him. Then he looked up at Dominic, who was watching him with an expression of raw, naked hope. You're crazy, Toby whispered. You locked the building. I would burn the building down if it kept you safe, Dominic corrected. People will talk. The press. I own the press. Toby bit his lip. He looked at the security guards, who were awkwardly looking at the ceiling. He looked at the snow falling softly outside the glass doors. And he looked at the alpha who was offering him the world. I have conditions, Toby said, his voice trembling but firm. Dominic straightened up. Name them. Anything. 1, Toby counted. I pay my own way. Well, not rent, because I can't afford your rent, but I work. I cook. I earn my keep. I'm not a trophy. Agreed. Dominic said immediately. You are the executive chef of the Sterling household. Salary is negotiable, but it will be substantial. 2, Toby continued, blushing. We take it slow. No. No mating bites. Not yet. I need to know this is real, not just pheromones. Dominic's eyes darkened with desire, but he nodded respectfully. I will wait. I will wait as long as it takes. A day, a year, a lifetime. And 3, Toby said, looking down at his worn-out sneakers. You have to buy Leo the robot dog he wants for Christmas. Dominic grinned. It was a real, blindingly handsome grin. I'll buy him the factory that makes the robot dogs, Dominic promised. Toby laughed. It was a wet, teary sound. Just the dog is fine, Dominic. Dominic closed the distance between them. He didn't kiss Toby, not yet. He respected the slow rule. Instead, he leaned down and pressed his nose against Toby's scent gland, inhaling deeply, marking Toby with his scent in front of his entire staff. Let's go home, Dominic murmured against his skin. Our coffee is getting cold. 1 month later. The scene had changed. The Sterling penthouse no longer looked like a museum. There were colorful drawings taped to the glass walls. There was a pile of Lego bricks in the corner of the living room that Dominic had stepped on twice and cursed loudly about. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon rolls and happiness. It was Christmas Eve. Toby was in the kitchen, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook," a gift from Leo. He was pulling a tray of gingerbread men out of the oven. Careful, hot. Toby called out. 2 blurs, 1 blonde, 1 dark-haired, raced into the kitchen. Caden and Leo were wearing matching elf pajamas. They looked healthy, happy, and inseparable. Caden had gained weight. His cheeks were rosy, and his silence was a thing of the past. Now he never stopped talking. Papa, Daddy says Santa is on the roof. Caden yelled. Daddy is a liar, Toby laughed. Santa comes tonight. Dominic walked into the kitchen. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a sweater that matched Toby's. He looked younger, softer, and infinitely more at peace. He walked up behind Toby, wrapping his arms around Toby's waist and resting his chin on Toby's shoulder. I am not a liar, Dominic murmured, nipping lightly at Toby's ear. I just saw a sleigh on the radar. Private airspace violation. Toby leaned back into the embrace. You'd probably try to buy Santa out, wouldn't you? Only if he has what I want, Dominic said. And what do you want? Toby asked, turning around in the circle of Dominic's arms. You have everything. Dominic looked at Toby. He looked at the flower on Toby's nose. He looked at the boys stealing cookies in the background. I do, Dominic whispered. Finally, he leaned in to kiss Toby, a soft, sweet promise of forever. But before their lips could touch, the intercom buzzed. Mr. Sterling, the concierge's voice sounded nervous. I'm sorry to disturb you on Christmas Eve, sir. What is it? Dominic sighed, not letting go of Toby. There is a person here to see Mr. Finch. She says she's his mother. Toby froze. The blood drained from his face. The tray of cookies rattled on the counter. My mother, Toby whispered. My mother died 10 years ago. Dominic stiffened, his alpha instincts flaring instantly. He pulled Toby tighter. Who is it? Dominic demanded into the intercom. She says her name is Elena, the concierge said. And she says she wants custody of her grandson, Leo. She has a court order. Toby gasped, clutching Dominic's shirt. That's not my mother. That's Leo's grandmother. His alpha father's mother. The room went deadly silent. Leo's other family. The family that had disowned Toby when he got pregnant. The powerful, cruel alpha family that had thrown Toby onto the street. They were back, and they wanted the heir. Dominic's face transformed. The soft, domestic father vanished. The ruthless CEO, the Wolf of Wall Street, returned. He released Toby gently and walked to the elevator. He pressed the button. Dominic, Toby asked, terrified. What are you doing? Dominic turned back. His eyes were cold fire. Stay here with the pups, Dominic said. His voice was a low growl that shook the windows. I'm going downstairs. To talk. No, Dominic said, buttoning his cuffs. To war. End of Chapter 5. Part 6. The Wolf and the Winter Moon. The lobby of the Sterling Tower was usually a cathedral of silence and commerce. Tonight, it was a battlefield. Dominic Sterling stepped out of the elevator. He was not wearing his suit jacket. He was not wearing shoes. He was still in his jeans and cashmere sweater, but he carried himself with the lethal grace of a tiger entering a cage of sheep. Across the marble floor stood Elena Vance. She was a woman of 60 who wore her wealth like armor, pearls, fur, and a sneer that had withered Toby's soul years ago. Behind her stood 2 lawyers in cheap suits and a private security guard who looked nervous. Elena looked up as Dominic approached. Her eyes widened slightly at his state of undress, but she recovered her arrogance quickly. "Mr. Sterling," Elena said, her voice dripping with false courtesy. "I apologize for the intrusion on Christmas Eve, but your employee is harboring my grandson. I am here to retrieve him." Dominic didn't stop walking until he was 2 feet away from her. He towered over her. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop. His pheromones flooded the space. Not the warm cedar Toby knew, but something acrid, dark, and suffocating. It was the scent of a predator warning a trespasser. "You are mistaken," Dominic said softly. The quietness of his voice was far more terrifying than a shout. "I have a court order," Elena snapped, waving a document. "Emergency custody. My son, Richard, is the biological father. We have genetic proof. That Omega upstairs, Toby, is unfit. He is destitute. He lives in a slum. A Vance heir cannot be raised in filth." "Filth?" Dominic tilted his head. "He lives in the penthouse of the Sterling Tower. He is the partner of Dominic Sterling. And his son." Dominic took a step closer, forcing Elena to step back. "His son is under my protection. That doesn't matter," Elena screeched, losing her composure. "Biology is law. My son wants his boy back." "Your son," Dominic laughed darkly, "is currently in a rehab facility in Nevada, dodging 3 paternity suits and a fraud charge. I know this because I bought the facility 10 minutes ago." Elena froze. The color drained from her face beneath her heavy makeup. "What?" Dominic pulled a phone from his pocket. He didn't look at it. He just held it up. "I also know," Dominic continued, his voice like grinding stones, "that your late husband's trust fund only releases the principal amount to the next male heir upon their 5th birthday. Leo turns 5 next month. You don't want a grandson, Elena. You want a payout." Elena's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The lawyers behind her began to shuffle away, sensing the disaster. You can't prove that," she stammered. "I don't need to prove it to a judge," Dominic said. "I just need to bankrupt you so you can't afford a lawyer to argue with me." Dominic tapped the screen of his phone. "I just instructed my brokerage firm to short sell Vance Industries. All of it. I am dumping $50 million of your stock onto the Asian markets right now. By the time the sun rises in New York, your company will be penny stocks. You won't have the money to buy a coffee, let alone a custody battle." Elena gasped, clutching her pearls. You monster. You'd destroy a legacy for a lunch boy." "I would burn the world for him," Dominic corrected. "But for you, I'll just buy your debt." He took another step. "Now, here is the deal," Dominic said. "You will sign these papers." One of Dominic's own lawyers, who had materialized from the shadows of the concierge desk, stepped forward with a sleek black folder. "What is this?" Elena whispered, her hands shaking. "A full surrender of parental rights," Dominic said, "and a consent form for adoption. I am adopting Leo. Today. I will never." "If you sign," Dominic interrupted, "I will stop the trade. You will keep your house. You will keep your pearls. But you will never, ever say the name Leo Finch again. If you don't sign, you will be homeless by morning." Dominic leaned down, his eyes glowing with alpha intensity. "Choose, Elena. Money, or a child you never loved." It took 3 seconds. Elena snatched the pen. She signed the papers with jagged, angry strokes. She didn't look at the document. She just wanted to save her fortune. "Done," she spat, throwing the pen at Dominic's chest. It bounced off harmlessly. "Take the brat. He's an Omega anyway. He'll probably be as weak as his father." Dominic caught the folder. He checked the signature. Then he looked at Elena with pure, unadulterated disgust. "He is stronger than you will ever be," Dominic said. "And he is an alpha. A true alpha. Just like his new father." "Get out," Dominic commanded. Elena fled. Her lawyers ran after her. The revolving doors spun, spitting them out into the cold, snowy night. Dominic stood alone in the lobby. He took a deep breath, exhaling the tension. He looked at the papers in his hand. Leo Sterling. He smiled. Upstairs, the penthouse was silent. Toby was sitting on the floor of the living room, building a fortress out of sofa cushions. Caden and Leo were inside the fort, clutching flashlights. Toby was outside, guarding the entrance with a spatula. He was shaking. Every time the elevator dinged on a lower floor, he flinched. "Is the bad lady coming?" Leo whispered from inside the fort. "No," Caden whispered back fiercely. "My papa has a spatula. He will smack her." The elevator dinged. This time on the penthouse floor. Toby scrambled to his feet, holding the spatula like a sword. His heart was in his throat. The doors opened. Dominic walked in. He looked tired. His hair was messy, snow was melting on his shoulders, and he smelled of cold air and victory. He stopped when he saw Toby with the spatula. A soft, genuine smile broke across his face. "You can put the weapon down, love," Dominic said gently. "The war is over." Toby dropped the spatula. It clattered loudly on the floor. What happened? Where is she?" "Gone," Dominic said, walking over. "She had a sudden change of heart, and a sudden change of financial status." Dominic knelt down in front of the cushion fort. He peered inside. 2 pairs of wide eyes stared back at him. "Leo," Dominic said softly. "Hi," Leo whispered. "I have a present for you," Dominic said. He didn't hand over a toy. He handed the black folder to Toby. Toby opened it. He read the header. "Petition for adoption. Second parent, Dominic Sterling." And below it, the signed surrender from the Vances. Toby's knees gave out. He collapsed onto the rug, clutching the papers to his chest, sobbing. Not sad tears. Hysterical, relief-filled tears that shook his whole body. "Toby!" Leo cried, crawling out of the fort to hug him. "I'm okay, baby, I'm okay," Toby cried, kissing Leo's face. "We're safe. We're never leaving. We're safe." Dominic watched them, his chest aching with love. He felt a small hand on his arm. It was Caden. "You fixed it?" Caden asked seriously. "I fixed it," Dominic nodded. "Good Alpha," Caden nodded approvingly. Then he leaned in and whispered, "Papa's crying happy water. You should kiss him." Dominic chuckled. "You think so?" "Yes. Kiss him. Then we open presents." Dominic stood up. He pulled Toby to his feet. Toby was still crying, clutching the folder like a shield. "Dominic," Toby choked out. You adopted him? You barely know us. It's been a month." "I knew the moment you fed my son," Dominic said, wiping a tear from Toby's cheek with his thumb. "I knew the moment I saw you defending your boy in the lobby. I don't need time, Toby. I need you." Dominic reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. "I didn't have time to go to the jeweler," Dominic admitted, looking suddenly shy. "So I raided the family vault. This belonged to my grandmother. She was the only Omega who ever terrified my grandfather." He opened the box. Inside sat a ring that wasn't a diamond. It was a rare, deep orange sapphire. The color of the sunset, the color of the braised pork belly glaze, the color of warmth. "Toby Finch," Dominic whispered, dropping to one knee. The room went silent. Even the kids stopped breathing. "You fed my son when he was starving," Dominic said. "You fed my soul when I was empty. You are the warmth in this cold tower. Will you let me be your alpha? Will you let me protect you, provide for you, and eat your cooking for the rest of my life?" Toby looked at the ring. He looked at Dominic, the most powerful man in the city, kneeling on a rug covered in Lego bricks, looking at Toby like he was the only star in the sky. "Yes," Toby whispered. "Yes, you idiot. Yes." Dominic stood up and slid the ring onto Toby's finger. It fit perfectly. He didn't wait this time. He grabbed Toby's face and kissed him. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a claiming. It was deep, passionate, and full of promises. Toby melted into him, wrapping his arms around Dominic's neck, the scent of cedar and vanilla finally mixing into a perfect, permanent bond. "EW!" 2 voices shouted in unison. Dominic and Toby broke apart, laughing. Caden and Leo were covering their eyes, peeking through their fingers. "Too much mushy stuff." Leo yelled. "Where's the robot dog?" "Priorities," Dominic laughed. Epilogue, 1 year later. The kitchen of the Sterling penthouse was chaotic. It was morning. Flour was everywhere. "Daddy, Leo stole my bacon," Caden shouted. He was 5 now, taller and loud. "I did not. It fell in my mouth," Leo argued, his mouth full. Dominic Sterling sat at the head of the island, drinking coffee and reading the Financial Times on a tablet. He looked up, unfazed. "Leo, give your brother a piece of bacon." "Caden, stop trying to stab him with a fork." "Papa," Caden whined. "Daddy isn't helping." Toby turned around from the stove. He was glowing. He wore a soft cashmere sweater that couldn't quite hide the small, round bump of his stomach. 6 months pregnant. A girl, the doctor had said. "Dominic," Toby warned, pointing a spatula. "Control your pack." Dominic grinned. He stood up, walking over to his mate. He wrapped his arms around Toby's bump, resting his chin on Toby's shoulder. "They're wild animals," Dominic murmured, kissing Toby's neck right over the mating bite, a scar that marked Toby as his forever. "They take after their papa." "They take after you," Toby retorted, leaning back into the warmth. Stubborn and dramatic. "Are you hungry?" Dominic asked, his hand rubbing the bump. "Is she hungry?" We want. Toby thought about it. Pickles. And ice cream. And maybe that truffle risotto you tried to feed Caden that one time. Truffle risotto and pickles, Dominic grimaced. You have terrible taste. I chose you, didn't I? Toby smirked. Dominic laughed. He turned Toby around and kissed him, a quick, sweet peck. Daddy, Leo yelled, tugging on Dominic's pants. Can we go to the park? The robot dog needs to pee. Robot dogs don't pee, Leo, Dominic sighed, picking up his son. Mine does. It leaks oil. That's concerning, Dominic muttered. He looked at his family. The chaotic, loud, messy, beautiful family that had started with a rejected lunchbox. Dominic Sterling had billions in the bank. He owned buildings, fleets of ships, and half the city. But as he looked at Toby, who was laughing as he plated up pancakes, Dominic knew the truth. He was the richest man in the world because of the plastic yellow box sitting on the drying rack. All right, pack, Dominic announced. Breakfast first, then the park, then nap time. For us, Caden asked. Dominic looked at Toby with a wicked glint in his eye. No, Dominic purred. For Daddy and Papa. Toby blushed bright red. The kids cheered for the park. And high above the city, in a tower that was no longer cold, the Sterling pack ate their breakfast, warm and full and together. The end. Thank you for reading this story. If you loved the journey of the Alpha CEO and his lunchbox Omega, please leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe for more boy love stories. See you in the next video.